Stalin's death on 1st March 1953 heralded the end of systematic abuse of Chechens and paved the way for their return to homeland. Nikita Khrushchev, Stalin's successor, reversed many of Stalin's brutal policies and restored the Chechen Ingush Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic on 11th of February 1957. Authorities in Moscow tried hard to weave Chechens in the Soviet fabric by accommodating them in Grozny's petroleum industry and the Red Army. However, the Chechen spirit of independence never dampened. Chechen aspirations for freedom became bolder than ever when Soviet troops withdrew from Afghanistan in 1989 after a humiliating defeat. Chechnya marked its independence by toppling Lenin's statue in Grozny in August 1991. Soon after a referendum, Chechnya was declared an independent republic on 1st of November 1991, with General Zokhar Dudayev assuming the post of presidency. Tensions between Chechen and Russian government escalated into a full-blown war in November 1994. Though many Russian generals warned Moscow of the consequences, Kremlin ignored their pleas and trebled the campaign only to find itself stuck in an explosive quagmire. Air raids on major Chechen cities, including the capital Grozny, resulted in mass destruction with the deaths of thousands of civilians. According to Russian estimates, around 35,000 people died in the Grozny battle alone. Chechen army withdrew from Grozny after putting up tough resistance. However, Russian army was completely demoralized by the guerrilla attacks waged by the rebel forces and started pondering its options for withdrawal. Realizing that Russian army failed to conquer Chechnya, then President Boris Yeltsin signed a peace deal with Chechen President Aslan Maskhadov on 12 May 1997 in Moscow. Despite promises, Russia did not provide funding from the federal budget to restore Chechnya's war-shattered infrastructure and create jobs for thousands of demobilized former fighters. Some resistance groups took to crime, while Maskhadov's rival Shamil Basayev and other prominent field commanders systematically set about undermining his authority. Hardliners on both the sides were unhappy with the peace pact and urged decisive military action to end the stalemate. Many contemporary analysts and historians are of view that Moscow's disastrous political and military decisions alienated the Chechens and pushed them into the hands of religious hardliners. A new influx of foreign fighters from Afghanistan and the Middle East into the republic replaced the Chechen nationalistic fervor with Islamic. Commanders like Shamil Basayev, right in the photograph, and Saudi-born Ibn al-Khattab radicalized the independence movement and declared a jihad to form an Islamic republic in northern Caucasus. Brazen attacks were carried out by the Islamist rebels in Russia, including kidnappings, bombings, and incursions in which hundreds of civilians lost their lives. A Russian soldier lighting his cigarette amidst the bombed residential complexes in Grozny. Kremlin moved the troops to Chechnya in October 1999 on the orders of newly appointed Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. Citing the terrorist activities carried out by rebel Chechen commanders like Shamil Basayev, Putin ordered the overthrow of Chechen government and purged the separatists. Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, was completely razed to the ground by Russian air force and artillery, and tanks took control of the streets. The rebel retreated to the mountains and regrouped to wage guerrilla attacks on the Russian occupation army and their Chechen allies. View of a UNHCR camp in Ingushetia. More than 150,000 Chechen civilians fled their homes across the republic and sought refuge in neighboring republics of Ingushetia, Dagestan, and Georgia, according to UNHCR report in 2001. To date, thousands of Chechen civilians still live in camps and temporary settlements outside Chechnya, reluctant to return home. The ones that have returned home face constant danger from checkpoints, disappearances, armed robberies, kidnappings, food and water shortages, and lack of jobs. Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin meeting present Chechen Republic President Ramzan Kadyrov outside Moscow on 20th of March 2009. Putin commanded the war in Chechnya and strengthened Russian writ in the republic by assassinating separatist leaders in and outside Russia and propping up pro-Moscow Chechen militia, of which Ramzan Kadyrov was the leader. Son of a pro-Russia mufti, he is accused of torture and murder of thousands of Chechen civilians and rebels during the last 10 years. However, his supporters give him credit for bringing peace to the war-torn republic and rebuilding it from scratch. Several leading human rights activists have lost their lives in the conflict while investigating the abuses committed by Moscow-backed forces and the separatists. Russia's leading journalist Anna Politkovskaya, right in the photograph, was murdered in broad daylight in her apartment block in Moscow on 7th of October 2006. She was very critical of Putin regime and held his government responsible for massive human rights abuses in Chechnya. Another critical figure murdered was Natalia Estamirova. She was abducted by unknown gunmen from her home in Grozny on 15th of July 2009. Her bullet-riddled body was found the same day in neighboring Ingush Republic. Outnumbered but still active are the anti-Moscow Chechen separatists that operate from the mountain hideouts in Chechnya. They seek strength from foreign fighters and have replaced the nationalist ideology with a purist Islamic one. Roadside detonations, hit-and-run attacks, and more importantly suicide bombings are the main tactics the rebels deploy against their enemies in Chechnya and beyond. Doko Umarov, middle in the photograph, is the commander of the Chechen rebel forces. His family too has faced terror, including the murders of his elderly father and brother, while his wife, children and sister being abducted by Moscow-backed Kadyrov forces. A videograph from the terrorist attack on Moscow's underground trains on 29th of March 2010. Rebel group operated by Doko Umarov claimed responsibility of the attacks and threatened more attacks on Russian soil. The pro-Islamist Chechen rebels have already claimed responsibility for the attacks on apartment blocks and theater in Moscow, various express trains in Russia, and the cowardly attack on a school in Westland Ingushetia, resulting in the death of hundreds of civilians over the years. The two wars in Chechnya have brought unprecedented loss of lives on the Chechens with their economy in tatters. There is not a single family in Chechnya that has not suffered terrible loss during the 15-year-old conflict. You will not find one single neighborhood that does not bear the scars of the wars. You might find children playing in the streets, but it is hard to find a kid who did not lose his father or mother, brother or sister, uncles or aunties, cousins, friends or grandparents in the conflict. Civilians on the other side, hundreds of Russians, Ingush, Ossets, Dagestanis, and many other people of different ethnicities lost their loved ones too. We may express our sympathies with the people who lost their loved ones, but can we not question the leaders on both sides when they make statements and take actions that beget further violence? We do not see any difference between the tears of innocent people crying over the suffering of their loved ones. Do leaders on both sides see any difference?